I'm Marguerite Tonery, and you're welcome to the Script to Story podcast series for springtime 2022. And this particular series is talking about the words we use and how the words we use can lift us up or can demonize certain people. So what we decided we talk to in the first episode of our podcast series is we decided we talk to university students because they are traditionally demonized by the words we use. So we have Aideen Doherty and Ciara Hogan, and you're very welcome to Script to Story.
Thank you for having us.
And tell us a little bit about yourselves. What stage are you at in your university degree? What are you studying? Just so that our audience knows your background.
I'm a third year undergrad in arts, doing English, media studies and philosophy.
I'm also a third year undergrad in arts, so I'm doing creative writing, English and geography.
Okay, so you're really in the arts, both of you. You're doing a lot of writing on a daily basis, and the words you use are vitally important to the grades you'll receive. So the words you use are on your mind all of the time. And tell me, what's it like on university campus right now? Because it's been a tumultuous time for all university students after the tragedy of Tullamore in recent weeks. And what's it like? What's the feeling? What are the words we're using on the campus?
I guess there's a general idea of trying to be careful, but also supporting each other. And we've learned in the past 2 years that we just have to kind of continue to live our lives, even in the face of new obstacles.
And I'm just wondering, in terms of living your lives, and how has it been for you all during COVID? Because a lot of you have been working from home. Most students have been working from home. How difficult has it been to transition back into campus life when you've been off campus, at home, studying everything online, recorded lectures for the last 2 years? How difficult has it been? Because the whole idea of university life is that you begin to explore yourself, you begin to build relationships that maybe last a lifetime. You meet maybe the partner that you end up with, not always, but you may meet the partner that you, and it was kind of almost that it was frozen in time, that transition, that growing up or that evolving or that exploring, how it was frozen. What was it like then when you got back into the campus, started meeting people again? Was it anxiety provoking, or was it, yay, yes, let's have a party?
I think it was a bit of both. Like, I personally was very excited to get back in person. Like, any hour they could give me, I was like, can't wait, up early. Yes, so excited to go in. But also, like, my parents would be essential workers and I'd go home a lot of weekends to see them. So the idea of coming into contact with people was also very frightening for me. Of it's still like anxiety, like inducing of, oh no, I'm going to be in contact with so many more people now. So there is also that factor. So while it was exciting, it was also a lot of anxiety going back originally.
And as you say that, I'm thinking of what Ciara just said there a few moments ago, that you're here for each other. And I understand that anxiety levels have risen almost threefold in adults since this pandemic. And the words we use to ourselves to calm ourselves down and the words we use with each other are vitally important. And how have you managed the anxiety when your heart is beating or your stress levels are high? How have you supported each other? What has been the words you've used to yourselves, and what words have you used to support each other?
I guess for me, the idea that just we can talk to each other, and it's kind of an unusual situation in that we are literally all experiencing the same thing, which is kind of rare. Like, it's not usual that so many people will be put into the same position of their lives being closed off in the same ways. So just having the opportunity to talk about the same stressors and all of that with the people you care about and who care about you, and just getting to have that conversation and work through the anxiety and the stress together has been excellent. So just kind of, I'm here and I'm with you, have been kind of essential to just continuing life as it is.
And I remember when I was a student, I actually, I think the first day I started in university, I walked into the student counselling centre and I said, I'm going to change my life now. I'm going to offload all of the kind of the words that I have heard, in my past that have kind of made me feel less than what I could be. And so I walked into student council and I said, okay, I want to change things. And the psychologist there was, what exactly do you want to change? And I said, I want to learn new ways of communicating with myself to offload I suppose, the societal expectations and the societal demands that are often placed on students. Because when you get to leaving cert, it's just this, your whole, from 4 years of age when you start, or 5 years of age now that people start school, all the way to leaving cert, all that is spoken about is your leaving cert. And then there's a huge level of expectation placed on students, and then not everybody gets the desired course. I don't know even what the percentage is, but then when you get to university and you have now you're expected to like blossom, and you're expected to have, I don't know, walk into incredible careers, and you look at all the people around you are expecting the same thing, or that expectation is on themselves. And it is a really trying time. And I don't think everybody understands how difficult it is for students. It is a trying time. So I walked in on the first day, I went into UCD, University College Dublin, and I walked into counselling. I'm just wondering, because that's something that I benefited from. Are they inundated in the counselling service now? Is that a career that we could all go into and earn a lot of money out of? How is it? How are people getting the support that they need? Apart from, you see, we could talk to each other and work ourselves into, fear is like fire, it just spreads like wildfire. And we can talk ourselves into something crazy, or we can talk ourselves into something very peaceful. And sometimes we need an external person. So what are the students doing in this situation?
In relation to the student counselling services at the moment, I've heard they're very helpful. I think they're meant to be offering 6 to 10 sessions. And you're meant to be able to use that throughout college or something like that. Last I heard from semester 1, they were completely inundated with the amount of requests for counselling, to the extent that they were giving one session before Christmas to everyone due to the pandemic, and they saw that the majority of it was anxiety and just feeling very alone and stuff like that among students.
So what are we going to do? This is now, there's a pandemic of anxiety. What can we change as students? What can be done? How can we change the face of Ireland? How can we change the face of our society? This is an opportunity. Wherever there's a challenge, or wherever there's dire need for some change can happen. The phoenix can rise from the ashes. So what are students doing now? What are they demanding of their government? I'm starting a revolution, I think.
I think we need overall better support in relation to the counselling services, public counselling services that are available. Like, there's a disconnectedness between GP services and counselling services where there shouldn't be. And unfortunately in Ireland, we still suffer a little bit from a stigmatization of mental health.
Okay.
And
isn't it a shame? Isn't it a shame? Because it's not that there's anything wrong with you. It's just that you're a product of societal's demands on you. Yeah.
Like, you go to the GP for your physical health, you go to the counsellor for your mental health. It's the same thing. If you have an issue with your leg, you go to see a doctor. If you have an issue with anxiety, you go to see another doctor. It's not complicated, and it shouldn't be stigmatized. But there needs to be a systematic overhaul in relation to that disconnectedness. We need to have better systems for referral, and we need to have a bigger counselling service. Like, the the NUIG counselling service has been overloaded, but other counselling services are completely backed up. Like people are waiting months for their first appointment, and that's not really acceptable.
And then when they
especially
get to that
moment.
first appointment, they know that there's only 5 left after this, and they're out on their ear again.
Yeah, it's too backlogged.
The words we use are vitally important to push for change on a governmental level. What are you doing? Who's your candidate you're running for election there in NUI Galway? Who's your next for the next general election? Which one of you girls women are going to run for election? Fight for change. Create the Ireland that you want to see. Oh, it's silence. Oh yeah.
I have already done student council. Like I've been a SU rep for my classes.
Fantastic.
It's complicated and it's difficult.
Yeah.
And trying to be representative of such a large college is difficult, trying to hear everybody's voices. And they do try quite hard. And the student union in general is really quite helpful and they do good work.
And I'm conscious too that across the world, there were vigils for Aisling Murphy across the world. And we saw the effects of mental health and how it took a woman's life, a 23-year-old woman's life in this country. We saw how we're seeing on a daily basis on the news, in the newspapers, on the radio, we're hearing it of different things happening for the mental health services. Because the mental health services are not providing the care that's needed. We had Sinead O'Connor, who's lost her son recently, and who came out and said that she was going to take the HSC to task if anything happened to him. And something did happen to him, he passed away. We have a serious problem here in this country that was highlighted again yesterday in the national news about South Curry mental health, pediatric psychiatry, mental health services in South Curry, and the flaws, the massive abuses that took place there. We have seen it across the age groups, from very young to very old, and from able to disabled individuals, from people with various levels of disability. And the words we use now are vitally important. So how are we going to change the words that we use? How are we going to push for change within our government? They're talking about a report, a review, analysis. All of these words are being used: report, review, analysis. What is that going to do? What change is that going to make? If you as young people can stand in vigils, thousands of young people come out in vigils for Aisling Murphy, can you come out in crowds and stand in different cities across Ireland as student unions, representatives or students from different universities, and demand a mental health service that is of good quality, because it's very poor at the moment? Can you do that? Can you do that?
I'm sure we can, but there would still be a somewhat negative reaction to that, probably. We have seen student unions all across the country and together as a group of colleges come out in support of things and present what they believe, and it's either ignored or people aren't interested or it's looked down upon. So it's difficult to
there you go. It's ignored.
Fight the good fight when you're not being given any recognition for it.
Yeah, it's ignored. It's looked down upon, as you said. And why are these older people, my age group and older than me, allowed to do that? Why are they allowed to behave in that way? Why are students not recognized? What are the words we need to use to change this?
I think it's not a modern concept. Throughout history, there's been a perception of younger generations not being as clever or as motivated or, understanding of people before them's struggles. And it needs to be highlighted that we do understand. We understand what those people went through, and we are people. We are people who have grown and are about to, or have already stepped into society as functioning members of society. We are the people who serve your coffee or help you in at the checkout or work in a bar. We are part of society, yet whenever we come out as students to do something, we are viewed as children. And I think that needs to be reshaped. I think often the connotation of students, that label, is mostly presented as a bad thing. So if it pops up in the news, it's like, oh, well, the students have done something wrong. They were out drinking, or they shut down a supermax, or all that kind of thing. But it's not. We're people. We just happen to be students, and we use our position as a community to try and do something for a wider society. And we need to start being recognized as people.
Students, I feel, are often presented in relation to older generations being naive, or they don't know anything because they're young. And it's no different from the sense of, it's like all of our opinions, they're not good enough, or that we just don't know anything, or that we physically cannot, as Ciara just said, we can't understand everything that they went through. And it's just, every generation has seemed to have their struggles, and anxiety seems to be the most common in relation to our age group. And what I found in relation to older age group, figuring out or hearing this, is they have nothing to be anxious about. Sure, in our day we had to do X, Y, Z, and it's just simply not fair.
Okay, so what you're saying is, and I would be 100% behind you on this, that it is not fair. It is not, and I would take it out of fairness. I'd say it's not right. You've a human right. You've a civil right to be respected. You've a right to be respected. You've a right to be heard. You've a right to be understood. You've a right for your opinions to be met. To be met where you are, and for change. There's huge. I often think that as a student, your brains are sharper. You may not have the experience of the career you'll end up in, but your brains are sharp. You have a sharp intellect. And that is a key to success in a lot of areas of life. You have the ability to work very hard, because university, I don't know, people think of university students as not really working, but that wasn't my experience. And the students that I know with internships, I sometimes have to slow them down, because they think that they have to work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, because that's almost the expectation. There's so many projects to be handed in, so many papers, so many exams, and it's become more and more difficult as the years have gone on. The competition has become higher in university, so the university students are working hard. They have a sharp intellect, and they are the people then that have the knowledge or the ability to turn words into action, because they can research, they can compile their response to any situation. And the only thing that you're lacking is, and I think this is the problem, is you're lacking time, because there's so much time has to be given to projects, so much time has to be given to essays, so much time has to be given to exams. You're constantly being distracted by the load of work that's on your plate, that it's very hard for you then to take that time to dedicate to changing something.
Like a lot of university students, majority of university students also have jobs.
Yeah.
So they do in fact end up working 7-day weeks.
Yeah.
And
burnout is quite high.
Burnout is very high. And these are people who, even though they're working that much and they're doing all of their college work, they still try to have a social life, because there's that connotation of college too. And if you don't try and have a bit of a social life, you get the fear of missing out, or FOMO. And that can be quite anxiety generating as well. So you don't want to miss out on having your social life with these new friends and building those connections that you're going to have for a while, because you've got to do so much work.
So are we saying all hope is lost? In your university's years, there's no point in trying to exercise change in society?
See, that's the great thing, I think, is that, yeah, the situation sucks a bit, and it gets a bit agitating, but so many people are always just quite hopeful and they try anyway because they've been told that if you try at something and if you work hard and you do all the stuff you're supposed to do, it'll work out. And that's not necessarily
That's the
always
greatest lie
true.
that was ever told. The greatest lie that was ever told. Yeah.
It is a pretty good motivator.
It is, yeah,
So
because
you do your work for college and you do your work for your job. And then if you have the energy left after meeting up with your friends, you try to do a little bit of work for your society.
Okay, Aideen, what do you think?
For changing society's perception of young people, I think it kind of starts with conversations and talking to each other, talking to your parents or like your older generations within your family about your own struggles, and just spreading conversation by that and just taking away the stigma in relation to students. I think that's like the first step to it.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I see that our society has changed a lot, where we would have had a lot of contact with our grandparents. We may have even lived with them years ago, but now people may not even know their grandparents, may never have met them. Older people are that distant thing, the way students are that distant thing. And that unless we integrate, unless we come together and talk and mix with each other, we'll never know how similar we are to each other, and we never know the richness that is found in multi-generational conversation and multi-generational relationships. I think you're making a really strong point there, Aideen. So if we want to exercise change, then do we ask the government, or do we create a society in which young and old mix more? And how do we create that society? Because if we mix more, we communicate more, we understand each other better, and we're there to support each other. Because if I don't know you and I'm going to believe what the media tell me or believe what somebody else tells me, because I don't have an actual connection with you. So you walk down Newcastle after coming out of a lecture, and an elderly woman walks up the road. She has no connection with you. She doesn't understand you. She will believe what anybody says about you, because she's never actually had a conversation with you. And you will believe something about her because you don't know her, you've never had a conversation, and maybe you never grew up with an elderly person. So that I think the point you made is critically important to change in society. We need to integrate more, we need to mix more, we need to communicate more with different generations, multi-generational conversation.
We had a conversation similar to this idea in one of my lectures in relation to media, because one of the things that separates older generations and younger generations at the moment is that we don't engage in the same media. Literally, the forms that we get our information from are completely different. Most young people get their news off of the internet, whereas older people would get a newspaper or watch the news on their television. But that creates a separation. And it's not even just that younger people or students are choosing to get their information off the internet because they want to. It's oftentimes that they don't have access to the other forms of media. So like, I'm in college at the moment and I don't have a television connection to the networks. I wouldn't be able to watch the evening news if I wanted to. And I don't have a radio, so I can't listen to the radio. So there was a discussion in relation to broadcast media and public service broadcasting, and whether or not it holds a place in our society. And I think it does, but I think that it needs to be more accessible on different mediums. So at the moment, RTE, they have Player, and that's good. And it does connect, but it's not as easy to access on the internet. And it's not necessarily as obvious for access on the internet. So trying to bring in younger people, incentivizing engaging in a modernized version of old media would be a way to connect the generations in our society.
And I read the news on RTE News app, and I actually don't watch television. Is the news on the television, RTE News at 6 o'clock, is that not the same that's on the app? Is that not the same information?
It would generally similar information, yeah. But
So-
RTE, I think, struggles with connecting with younger people almost in an advertisement sense.
Okay.
They don't put themselves forward enough. They aren't noticeable.
Okay, well, I think they're going through a huge transition at the moment and a huge struggle at the moment. So hopefully when they come out of this transition, they will be able to cater for those other aspects, those other parts of society. Yeah, you're making a very strong point. If we keep disconnecting from students, if we keep disconnecting from different age groups, then this bias is going to continue for generations to come. Okay, so it's about reconnecting, it's about building bridges, about providing places where all age groups can congregate and do something together.
We need a space to connect in that conversation, and something that provides the topic of conversation, like a completely connected evening news service.
The other thing that I noticed with studies that were done on elderly people in nursing homes, when they brought toddlers in, and the elderly people could be the octogenarians, and they brought toddlers in to communicate with them. And they found that the elderly people's health perceptions improved dramatically, and their well-being, their mood lifted. And because they were playing with the toddlers, and the toddlers didn't see them as anything other than another person, an extension of their parents. And there were no biases because the toddlers were so young, they were still forming their own personalities. So there was no biases there. And they found that both toddlers and the octogenarians and older people, maybe people in their 70s as well, who are in nursing homes, benefited hugely. So you can see that it works. There's a huge benefit from it. And then we just need to add in another few generations in between all of that, from toddler up to 100 or whatever people will live to. Well, this has been an interesting conversation. And I think there's hope for the future when you think about it. When you think about the words we use can change when we get to know people, when we understand them, when we spend time communicate with them. Now we just need forums. We need places for people of all generations to come together. And the only place that I know that I grew up with all generations coming together was the church. And that is gone. People don't go to mass as much as they did. And I'm not going to comment whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm just saying that that's the only place that I can ever remember in my lifetime of multi-generational congregation. So we need that to be multi-generational for anything, for socializing, for entertainment, for anything. And by breaking the barriers, then we have a society, students will be heard, older people will be heard. It sounds like there's hope. We just need to find our way to that place. Ciara and Aideen, thank you very much for being part of this very interesting episode of the Script to Story podcast series for spring 2022. I hope to see you back again sometime, and I wish you every success in the future. I hope your lives are filled with magic. Thank you very much for being here.